Alright, so I figured since I have both of these here, I'd go ahead and I'd make a video on them. Hello there, people of the internet. Welcome to the party. I have two 6.5 caliber Vetterli rifles. These right here are rifles that the Italians converted from their 10.4 millimeter black powder guns back in the... they were using those back in the late 1800s, and then about the time of World War I, a little bit earlier, the Italians saw the writing on the wall, and they converted a lot of those old black powder guns to use the new smokeless powder 6.5 Carcano cartridge. Although they knew that these rifles were not really strong enough to be able to handle that cartridge, they did it anyway. These rifles were never intended for frontline service by the Italians. However, the Italians just kind of kept them around as a just-in-case firearm if they found themselves in a particular situation where they needed to have more guns. So I feel like everyone watching this channel has gotten to that point to where we all just feel like, hey, we need more guns. So the Italians did that, and for logistical purposes, they converted them to that smokeless powder round, and you could probably fire off a couple of shots with those before they break. Normally, for loading these rifles, you want to hand load your cartridges, and you want to undercharge them significantly, simply because these are just not designed for smokeless powder rounds. Now, that being said, I'm sure some people are going to point out the failures of C & Arsenal's Vetterli rifles, and thank you for that, as every time I show these off, this is all I hear about, and they'll talk about the different reasons why, and they'll come up with all sorts of explanations and whatnot. Well, for C & Arsenal, the sleeve on the locking lug, or the locking system, broke, and there's definitely not something that you want, and that's just a result of the Vetterli having a weak action. And they also had an issue with case head separation, which is what you get whenever you have issues with headspace. And because of that right there, a lot of that has to do with whether or not there was some pitting or rusting in the sleeve that is inside these barrels. Yes, they are sleeved. A lot of people tell me that the sleeves tend to walk simply because they were soldered in. Well, the sleeves in these have a stair-step style of insertion. They're not the type of sleeve that people seem to be thinking about, where it's just one straight piece. These right here are stair-stepped into the barrel to ensure that they have essentially a mechanical lock, so they don't go anywhere, and that is definitely a brilliant move on the Italians' part. So, we're not really talking about these rifles. I've already discussed them in ad nauseum on the channel. We're just going to go ahead and compare these two that I got. This is the one that I just picked up. I think I got this in like 2 days ago. So it is a 6.5 Vetterli rifle, and it is in actually pretty gosh darn good shape for what it is. This particular one is an 1889 production, and we still have a lot of bluing on the barrel. I've already bore tested both of these, and they both bore test fine. As a matter of fact, this one right here, I've shot on the channel plenty of times. You guys can go check that out. And the reason why I'm actually comparing these two side by side is because this Vetterli I don't know anything about, haven't shot it, haven't checked it out, etc., etc. But this Vetterli up here, I've shot numerous times, like a lot of times. I shoot my own undercharged hand-loaded ammunition. I use 4064, which is the gunpowder that I use. It's just a good, like, slow-ish burning powder. I think it's a really, really good way to make sure that you don't overpressure your rifle. And then I, like I said, undercharge it. And I have shot those rounds through this rifle many, many, many times. But this rifle that I just got in is in comparably good shape. We still got plenty of bluing along the firearm itself. Nothing really big standing out. The one big difference between these two rifles is the triggers. The trigger on this one right here is probably about 12 pounds, and that is fine. That is okay. The trigger on my Vetterli that I've actually taken out and shot is much, much, much lighter, to the point to where it is dangerous. As a matter of fact, if I close this thing too hard or too fast, well, there it goes, just fired. Yep. If you do not treat this thing properly, and if you close it too hard and too fast and whatnot, then it will actually prematurely go off. And that's not something we want, and that's just because the Ethiopians, from what I can tell, have gone in and filed this thing down to the point of it being dangerous. Now, that being said, just from my own experience with this rifle, if I hold the trigger forward a little bit whenever I close this bolt, then we don't have issues with that thing falling down. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of touch-up welding on this to get the pieces back to where they need to be. But whenever I actually close this thing properly and everything's all locked up nice and tight, the trigger pull on this thing is so nice. Whenever I say so nice, it's probably about, I don't know, 3 pounds or so. And that 3 pound mark would be very, very optimal for a rifle, especially one that I'm not going to be carrying around or anything like that. If I was carrying it around, then I might want something with a heavier trigger pull. But for a range toy and just for accuracy and whatnot, a 3 pound trigger pull on a rifle is incredibly nice. The only issue is that things don't really line up all that well, and we get situations where the thing will fire prematurely. So we definitely don't want that. It is a safety issue, and I'm working on fixing that. That being said, I have fired this rifle plenty. The sleeve has not started walking. Come on, you. The sleeve has not started walking. We don't have any issues with rust or anything in the chamber on this. I use non-corrosive ammunition, so I don't have to worry about any sort of, what would you call it? We're just going to call it rust and pitting inside of the barrel and chamber. A lot of times your old rifles have a lot of that just because ammo back in the day was corrosive, especially black powder ammo. This right here is actually a very nice, accurate rifle, especially with that trigger pull. I've already bore tested this on multiple occasions and shown that it shoots well on the channel, so I'm not going to bother with that. And the Vetterli that I just got also bore tested just fine, so I imagine that this one is going to be nice and accurate as well. Granted, the trigger is not going to be nearly as good, so I doubt that I'll get all that much accuracy. So this one that I just got is a Tourney. This is a Tourney production, and it's an 1889 produced rifle. And the one that I've had for forever is a it looks like, yeah, Torino production, 1877 made rifle. So this rifle is like 20 years older than this rifle. Both these rifles would have started off like this right here. This is an old school 10.4 millimeter Vetterli, and this particular one was converted to have the magazines. These were originally single-shot black powder rifles. At the turn of the century, basically countries all over the world were trying to figure out how to get their breech loaders to have more ammunition inside of them just for, better firearms. And a lot of countries would end up converting and adding magazines to their old single-shot rifles to give them a higher capacity. And this right here is what the Italians did. We got the Vetterli rifles that have that magazine added to the bottom. And about the time, like I said, of World War I or so, a little bit earlier than that, the Italians went through and converted all these Vetterli rifles to a 6.5 cartridge. So this 6.5 one that I just picked up is in pretty gosh darn good shape, and I'm looking along all the stress points, and I'm seeing if there's anything real different between this Vetterli rifle and the Vetterli rifle that I own and know works well, and I don't see anything. We have no stress fractures over on the sleeve where our barrel locking system is. There's a normal failure point with these rifles. And the chamber and whatnot in this thing looks pretty gosh darn good, and the barrel sleeve does not appear to be walking. Anytime you're dealing with one of these rifles that has a barrel sleeve inside of it, if you just want to make sure that the sleeve is in place and not going anywhere, look at the end of your barrel and just make sure that that sleeve is still flush with the end of your barrel. If you see any changes or movement, like anything like that, any dips or extensions of that sleeve, then you know that it is not in its proper place. However, like I said, these right here are stair-stepped in for a mechanical fit, so the odds of that happening are incredibly minimal. The only way that could happen is if the barrel were to step out of the chamber area. If it were to go that way into the receiver, upon firing, which is incredibly unlikely because you have a bolt-in cartridge blocking it from going that way. So it's a really, really good mechanical lock system. The only way that you would have issues with that is if you had some kind of pre-developed headspace issue, which could potentially happen. The sleeves and chambers inside of these rifles are known to have issues with rusting and whatnot, and they're known to be a pretty gosh darn soft metal. The Italians, whenever they made these guns, they just did not put much thought or effort into them. They were not a primary concern, with lack of better terminology here. These right here were just guns that the Italians wanted to have for just-in-case purposes if they found themselves to not have enough Carcanos. Now, a lot of these guns made their way over to Africa in, well, with everything the Italians were doing in Africa for a good many years. And over in Africa is where they stayed for a good long time. Alright, well, I don't think that I see any real issues with these. I do have to do a little bit of work to the one that I already own just to get it to be a little bit safer. But besides that, they both look good. I am noticing that the rear sight on the one I just got is in significantly better shape than the rear sight on the one that I've had for a while. The one I've had for a while is just more worn out, and that makes sense because it's 20-something, 22 years older than the one that I just got. So we got 1889 versus 1877. And those are the original rear sights. Sling swivels, both those look good. Barrel bands, everything's locked up and lined up just fine. Both of them are missing their cleaning rod. Alright, this right here is just a little video where I wanted to check these out, and I figured I'd make a video on it and show it off, because hey, why not? It was fun. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. And you guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I will see you guys on the next episode.
Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.